Guys, we are live. This is the UFC 257 recap show. Yes, you heard that right. We are live on YouTube. I know a lot of you guys listen to the show on the podcast, way. We will still have the podcast, but adding to the content here at Sherdog and Loudmouth MMA, we are now on YouTube to do this. The problem with doing a live show is if Ben's audio dies, which sometimes happens, if his Skype dies, I'm going to have to keep rolling. If my dog starts barking, I'm going to have to keep rolling. That's what the bad things about live. The good thing about live is people get it up right away. People can comment on YouTube. We can try to talk back to the comments, stuff like that. So that's the benefits. This show is brought to you by the Sherdog Podcast Network and the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. I am your host. My name is Keith Schillen. Joining me, as always, is the man behind Sherdog.com. He is the executive, not the senior editor. I'm sorry, the senior editor of Sherdog.com.
No,
he is
all good, but
he is.
I have more responsibility than I can handle as it is. I'm white knuckling it. The last thing I need is a battlefield promotion. I'm senior editor at Sherdog.com, and I am a man behind Sherdog. That is it.
There you go. We'll say it. He is the man. So as you said, we might have some mishaps being live, but I don't think anything will happen tonight that will top what happened at UFC 257. And I'm not even talking about the fights. What I'm talking about, Ben, is something that actually happened to you. Is so many people could not order the pay-per-view. It was frozen on them. Before we get into the fights, it worked fine for me. Explain to me what exactly happened to you and probably a whole bunch of people across the world.
I'm used to having problems ordering UFC pay-per-views ever since they've gone to ESPN Plus. Just, I'll order, whether I order it 3 hours before or 3 days before, I'll have to log out, log back in, flush my cache, delete my cookies, call ESPN. It's been a travesty every time, but I've usually only ended up missing, the first 5 or 10 minutes of the card. This time, 85 minutes. Just, I couldn't watch it. It would get to the splash screen where you had the painted Dustin and painted Connor and would just sit there. And it appears that many, many people had the same problem. Twitter was kind of going crazy. Interestingly, quite a few UFC fighters having trouble watching, which reminded me that they don't get these things for free, which is fucking ridiculous. But whatever. I ended up having to pull an illegal stream, which never makes me feel good about myself. But I had to do what I had to do in order to be able to do my job.
Wow. So, Ben just admitted something. We'll probably have this taken down as soon as we got this up. We made it about 3 minutes in, and there you go, guys. That was the recap.
I'm happy to show them my receipt.
So yeah, you said a lot of fighters. I know. I was busy watching the fights. I did scroll through Twitter a little bit. I saw Kevin Lee posted that he didn't get it. I saw Dan Tom, a friend of ours over at MMA Junkie, was having trouble. Our very own Josh Gross was having trouble. I'm sure there was many more. Not a good start to, the event for the UFC, but it ended in spectacular fashion. We'll get right into that. UFC megastar, MMA megastar, just sports in general, just world icon, Conor McGregor returned to the octagon to take on his old nemesis, Dustin Poirier. The last time they fought, Conor McGregor dusted him in, I think it was around 90 seconds. He predicted a win in under 60 seconds. That did not happen, and he did not even get the win as Dustin Poirier picked up a second-round TKO. Man, do you want to break down like the X's and O's first, or do you want to get into like the little more of the storyline of this? What would you prefer first?
I'm interested in the X's and O's.
Okay.
I mean, I saw a lot of things, and you tend to have a sharper eye for that than I do. So I want to dive into that side of it if it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll let you jump right in there. Tell me what really stood out to you.
What I'll say first is, I thought, and I felt as though McGregor was doing well and was winning the fight right up until the last 5 seconds. He was doing the things that typically win him fights. Poirier was doing better than I expected. The early takedown attempt, obviously, there was a lot of talk about that from the booth. I did like that. But what I liked more than that was he closed the distance and spent a lot of time in the clinch. Obviously, Conor McGregor is very dangerous in the clinch. He showed us last year when he came back and just blew Donald Cerrone out of the water in 40 seconds, and he did it tonight as well. Like his shoulder shrugs, his knees from the clinch. He's very dangerous in the clinch, but he's a different animal in the clinch than when he's just in space and able to flow like he wants to. So it did make me happy that Poirier denied him a lot of that in the first round, even if I thought McGregor still did win the first round. I liked Poirier's investment in low kicks. I thought they were going to pay off as the fight went on. It didn't end up needing to happen, but even by the time the fight ended, I thought they had taken something off of McGregor's movement. I think they probably contributed directly to the finish.
Yeah, no, so there's so many things to talk about from the X's and O's that would really impress me. You talked about, well, first, I want to talk about the walkout. So Dustin Poirier had a look on his face. It was different than the last time. The last time, Conor mentioned him being in his head. I'm actually reading John Kavanagh's book. He talked about being in Dustin Poirier's head. Dustin Poirier mentioned that the moment was too big to him. Like that was not a hidden thing. They admitted to that. That was not the case. Like he was walking around to the cage. He was confident, and a lot of that has to do with all the things that he's done since that fight. Now we'll get into that in a little bit. So he had that going for him. He was not like broke walking in. He was walking in with some confidence. Now we'll get into X and O's. I love this strategy. I love the fact that he looked to wrestle early for the, Conor has always struggled with wrestling. But besides the struggle in wrestling, there's two other things that really jumped out to me. One, Conor's always been a fast starter. That's what we were talking about. Like it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that he could knock him out in 30 seconds. Under 60 seconds. It wasn't realm of the possibility because we've seen him do that. I mean, he knocked out Jose Aldo with the very first punch he threw, or the very first punch that connected. Mm-hmm. So he's a fast starter. But also, wrestling wears you down. We've seen Conor wear down late. We talked about ahead of time. The deeper this fight, the better chance Dustin Poirier had to. I always think about when guys want to wrestle early. I think about George St. Pierre versus BJ Penn, where George St. Pierre mentioned, like, I wanted to get the lactic acid in his arms. Like, that was a thing that I thought was brilliant. You mentioned the leg kicks. You said the leg kicks, I believe you said it didn't pay, much. It didn't do its damage in the long run, but I definitely think it did enough damage to lead to the knockout because a couple things. You mentioned the movement of Conor. Conor likes to be a little bit on the outside where he's slipping punches, just kind of like he pulls the punches just a little bit out of the range where he can come back. And he had to actually move into a closer range. He had to get in the pocket to try to avoid those leg kicks. And that's not really where Conor likes to work. That's where Poirier loves to work. So he kind of forced Conor to fight in his range. The also thing is, because Conor has such that wide stance, we talked about it on the preview show, that he's going to be open to leg kicks. We talked about even like he didn't have much success, but Eddie Alvarez was targeting the leg kicks. You take away guys' base, you're going to take away his power. Now, obviously, Conor, the way he hits, he is such a that's the biggest part of his game is pound for pound, one of the hardest hitters in the game. So now also you're taking away his power. So that really stood out to me. Two other things I want to say before we get into some other stuff is his chin. Like, I also scored the first round for Conor. I thought he did extremely well in the first round. Even though he lost, eventually got knocked out in the second round, like he wasn't getting blown out. He was having good moments, especially early around in that round. Is the chin of Poirier. He got tagged with some heavy shots that would have put other people out. And not only did he eat it, like he fired off some of his own stuff. And then when he started landing his own stuff, he already walked in so confident. It seemed like his confidence just started like rising and he started like, I kept saying like, I had a bunch of people over with me. I said, man, he's starting to feel himself. Like he started pointing at him. He's starting like he was living in that moment. He was enjoying himself, which is always a scary thing. Not a cocky where like I feel like I'm going to win, but like I got this. Like I'm doing well, and that confidence builds. But the other thing that really stood out to me, and kind of goes with the same thing I said, is just the mental toughness of this guy. He was the guy that was supposed to be counted out. Conor opened. He opened as a negative 175 favorite. At one point, it was up to negative 340, which is a massive favorite. It even closed it. Good.
That happens to the line every time Conor fights because all the squares come in and and they
the
push
football
the line
bettors, the
on
baseball, the football bettors, the baseball bettors, the guys who. So I understand, but like he's counted out. It's Conor versus that other guy, and just to be that mentally strong to come back in a comeback fight against Conor, the second time around, it was just really incredible to me. Which, he didn't meant to break, which is so incredible. So I want to go back to their first fight. And this is what I want to talk about, and I want to talk about this part. When I think of Dustin Poirier, the thing that, like, if I could come up with one theme for Dustin Poirier, it's just turnaround. He's turned around every moment when we start counting him out. He finds a way to turn around. Go all the way back to the first Conor McGregor fight. This is he was a veteran, but this seemed like, this was Conor's first real big fight. It also was like Poirier's first big fight, and he was starched. He was, as Conor said, he's had his head dribbled off the canvas. He's Mystic Mac. I said I'd knock him out in the first round, and I did it. That was one point he turned around. Another point I think about is that he moved up to lightweight. People counted him out. And then he got starched by Michael Johnson, and that was a terrible loss, and it seemed like, oh, we'll never see him. Like, he had a little run, now he's done. But he found a way to turn around and started beating guys like Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez and, like, all these guys that were supposed to beat him. And I'm not talking about the betting lines, but I'm just like moments, guys with bigger names and more success. Anthony Pettis. Then he finally made it. He got the interim title. How do you get the interim title? He went against Max Holloway. What happened in that fight? He came out to a fast start, and then Max Holloway started putting on him, and Max Holloway started doing Max Holloway things, and it seemed like Dustin Poirier is going to lose. And then he found a way to dig down and to, like, survive, turn it around and win. Go back to the Khabib. Khabib mauls him. Oh, what a terrible moment. It was the storybook ending to his career, and then he gets that moment, and he gets mauled. The good guy gets mauled. He finds a way to turn around. Go to his last fight, and I know I'm talking. I'm definitely gonna let Ben jump in here. I've got so much excitement going on right now. Dan Hooker came out to a fast start against him. Dan Hooker was looking great, and Dustin Poirier dug deep. Going into the fifth round, I had it 2-2. He dug deep, won the fifth round, and then obviously the turnaround tonight. Lost the first round. Wasn't like a huge, massive turnaround, but lost the first round. Still found a way. And what I meant by the turnaround, just starting from where we started, losing to Conor, to ending and beating Conor, absolutely sensational. Just talk to me about, like, what is your theme with Dustin Poirier?
I think you summed up a lot of it really well. I normally am kind of slow to give too much credence or too much weight to the so-called intangibles in MMA. I think a lot of times people make a bigger deal out of them than they really need to. Like the whole MMA forum science of trying to figure out who looked scared at the weigh-ins, for example. And I say that as a guy who's been on the forums for 15 years. Like I've been a scientist, but it's a ridiculous pursuit. Saying somebody, is tough or has heart or is a warrior, a lot of times it's almost like when Mike Goldberg used to say that somebody has this skill, and that skill, and then the opponent has very heavy hands. It's just what he would say when he couldn't think of anything else nice to say about you. That's not the case with Poirier. The things that they say about him, just the mental fortitude, the toughness, the ability to pick himself up and dust himself off after failure in the cage. You can't overestimate that. It's, tonight it carried him to victory over somebody who had beaten him very badly the first time they fought and still had all the same stylistic advantages that he had the first time. Full disclosure, you and I both picked McGregor to win this fight. We both picked him fairly confidently by early knockout. I'm not sad to be wrong. I watch these fights, because I learn things. I learned a lot tonight, but you can point to some of the strategic wrinkles that Poirier introduced that had not, been in place in their first fight. You can point to the fight taking place at lightweight. As I said, I think McGregor and Poirier are both better lightweights than they are featherweights.
Agreed.
But I think the difference is even greater for Poirier. You can point to Poirier having been more busy against high-level competition in the time since their first fight. But all of that maybe isn't enough to win this fight for him, except for just the difference in confidence. This is now a Dustin Poirier who knows that he can come back from adversity. And there's a switch that flipped in his head when he got to the stool after the first round. You said that, you know, by the second round, he just appeared to be feeling himself. Yeah. I think so. I think he sat down on the stool and said, even though I lost that round, I've got this.
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah, it was absolutely sensational. So one thing you said, I just want to jump in on. We don't root for outcomes. Like, we don't root for this fighter to win. We don't root for. I kind of root for a story. Like, I want the big story. I want to come in here after, you know, the event is over, and I want to talk about something exciting. And that's exactly what happened when Dustin Poirier knocks out Conor McGregor. Now, this is going to be a really weird question, so kind of bear with me. Let me get a little groundwork in this. Between the way he fights, his willingness to fight everybody, he's fought everybody, he's had his ups, he's had his downs, you know, all the things he does outside. You know, he's one of the truly good. I mean, there's so many good guys in the sport, but he's one of the truly best good guys. He's a real person. He does all this stuff for charity. He doesn't just do it for, you know, that a boy. He doesn't do it for the attention. He does it because he's just a good person. Between all that, the Family Guy, the long, long road, all the way back to the reality TV show days to where he is now. Does anybody deserve this moment more than Dustin Poirier does?
It would be hard to point anybody out. As you say, for all the reasons outside of the cage, it makes a fantastic story.
I was thinking about this, and it just seems to me like a movie. You're the guy, you're not flashy, you face the, I'm not calling Conor McGregor a bad guy, but if this was a movie, the foe, the brash, the cocky guy, you face him and he absolutely starches you. He embarrasses you. Everyone says you're a bum. And then at the end of the movie, you get your revenge. You work hard. You have all your sad. I'm sure he's had moments where he's crying with his wife over results. And then
I think you're describing Rocky 2.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, there it is. But the only difference with Rocky 2 is, like, Rocky went the distance with Apollo and Rocky 1. Like, yeah. Imagine if Rocky started and he just got, like, starched in, like, 90 seconds and the credits rolled. And there probably would, if that was the case, there wouldn't have been a Rocky 2. No. Like, if Sylvester Stallone got knocked out by Apollo Creed in, what was it, 90 seconds in the film? Like, yeah. He's not getting that rematch. So that's what makes it, like, even better than a movie. Let's look over to Conor, because we both talked about some good things Conor did. I thought Conor looked good. He didn't get blown out. It wasn't a terrible showing, but overall, like, where would you grade his performance? Obviously not what he wants, but what would you grade him overall?
I'd give him probably a B. I can only point to one or two things that he did that, okay, that's a mistake, rather than something that Poirier did well and just forced the action. Got to check leg kicks. That, and the funny thing is, obviously he's been very idle in the last 3 or 4 years in MMA. Like, obviously he had the huge boxing match, but the resurgence of the low calf kick and just the resurgence of kind of low kicks in general, that's something that has happened since he was the double champ. That is his time away from the sport kind of telling on him in some ways.
Yeah, no, that's actually an excellent point. So I think he looked good. He still looks like a top 10 lightweight in the world. To me, probably still looks like a top 5 lightweight.
Let me throw this out here just real quick. I said I gave him a B. The reason is, obviously he lost to Poirier, but how many lightweights in the world would have beaten him there tonight?
No, not many. And many people would have went out with some of the shots that he landed. I mean, we know the power of Conor McGregor. Dustin Poirier, he's just rock hard. I mean, other than the Michael Johnson knockout, which seems more flukish than, and I don't want to call it knockout a fluke, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it seems more of the exception to the rule than the actual, evidence of a guy who's got a weak chin. So I want to ask this. Conor did say that he didn't make any excuses, but he's like, I need to get in there more. That's on him. That, being out for a year or layoff, how much of a factor do you think that is?
It's a factor. I don't know if a perfectly, running smooth, been fighting at least twice a year McGregor would have beat Poirier tonight. Obviously, I picked Poirier to win, or I picked McGregor to win anyway. But he certainly would have been better. I think he does have a point. But it was just Poirier's night. I don't want to take away from Poirier anything. I don't want to say that, well, if McGregor, hadn't been rusty, he would have won. I don't know. Poirier came out with a great game plan, exercised or executed it very, very well, showed some fortitude. Like, I'm not taking anything away from that.
Yeah, I definitely think it had a factor because one thing about Conor's game has always been timing. Well, obviously he hits hard. It's where he lands the perfect time shot that actually adds to the power, adds to the velocity. And how do you get your timing? You get your timing by being in there, getting the work in. So I definitely think that is a factor. I'm not saying he would have won, but it definitely would have helped. But the moment where I knew that there was a turning in the match was when Conor started trying to grab the leg kicks, which is not what you do. You're literally opening up your face because your defense is now down by your calf. And that's what opened up the shots for Poirier. And until he fixed that, he's going to lose other fights. So let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about the stardom of these guys. How big of a star was born today with Dustin Poirier? Obviously, we saw how big of a star Nate Diaz became with a win over Conor. Obviously, see how big of a star Khabib did with a win over Conor. What do you expect from Dustin Poirier?
I expect that this will elevate his stock. Luckily, the pay-per-view issues were resolved well before we got even to the third fight on the main card. So a lot of people will have seen this, and a lot of those people aren't MMA fans. They're just Conor McGregor fans. But hopefully when they see him lose to a fighter who just put on a fantastic gutsy performance, was gracious in victory, and McGregor, at least for the moment, gracious in defeat, maybe he'll make a few million new fans.
Yeah, I think so. I also think the thing about Dustin Poirier, he seems like someone who's just so grounded. Obviously he's a family guy. His wife was there. He's, I don't know how much you got to watch afterwards, but they were, when the commentary team is kind of recapping, they had him in the background in the locker room getting dressed, and you could see he had a picture of his daughter in there. He just seems like a grounded person. He's also a guy. He just seems like a good teammate. I expect him to be back in American Top Team very shortly, getting some other person ready for the fight. He doesn't seem like a guy that the limelight will get to him. Will he be on SportsCenter tomorrow or the next day? Yeah, probably. Will he get a little more press that he should? He should get interviewed by Jim Rome, or maybe I would love to see him on a Tonight Show, or I'm showing my age, but the late shows. Who's out there? Jay Leno. They're not Jay Leno, but those guys. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Help me out here. I can't think of literally one guy.
I don't watch TV.
Oh, yeah, there you go. We got two guys who don't really watch. I don't know. The redheaded guy and the tall redheaded guy and
Conan
O'Brien. There you go, Conan O'Brien. I can see him doing one of those shows, and I don't know. Maybe Joe Rogan brings him back in. So yeah, he's just one of those guys who deserves it, but he just doesn't seem like he could do the Today Show tomorrow or Monday and still be a guy that would take pictures with every single fan and just working, holding pads for some amateur fighter at American Top Team. So let's talk about Conor for a second. So I'm sure you kind of had the same thing that I got when anytime Conor fights or any I always judge, I know how massive a fight's going to be is when I start getting text messages from friends and they say, hey, who do you like? Oh, how much should I bet on this guy? Conor. Oh, Conor. I got millions of them all week long. So I know this thing's going to do huge. But I want to go through Conor's record for a second. If you are a Conor McGregor supporter, you're not the guy who orders next pay-per-view. You're not the guy who's going to be watching Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov 2 weeks from now. If you're a Conor fan, or the ultimate casual fan, I think I saw I mean, the amount of celebrities that were tweeting on the screen. I think I saw Chris Godwin. I don't know. Which would be really crazy considering they have a game tomorrow. The Tampa Bay wide receiver. I don't know if there's two famous Chris Godwins, but Chris Godwin tweeted.
I'm pretty sure it was the Tampa guy.
I'm assuming it is. If he drops a pass or something, I don't think Brady was at. I think Brady was at Connor's last fight. I don't think Tom Brady, was watching at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. I'm sure he was probably asleep. But they were all out there. But I want to go over Connor's. His last 7 times you bought a pay-per-view from Connor, it was not good. You have the Nate Diaz loss, the Nate Diaz win, the Eddie Alvarez win, the Floyd Mayweather loss. Call it whatever you want, but Floyd Mayweather loss, Khabib Nurmagomedov loss, Donald Cerrone win, Dustin Poirier loss. That's 4 losses out of his last 7 bouts, whatever you want to throw that McGregor win. When will does he have to win to still be a draw, or when will he stop being a draw?
He has to win enough. I'll make a comparison. It's not a perfect comparison, but for a long time, BJ Penn was the accepted best lightweight in the world and a sneaky good pay-per-view draw by the standards of the day. Like by the immediate post tough era, 2005 when they bring back lightweight, like 2006, to 2011, a sneaky good pay-per-view draw. Even though it was understood that he could lose a fight at any given time. But he won just enough that he still had that magic that Penn fans, and I was certainly one at the time, believed that on the right night he could do anything in the world to anyone. He needs at least to win enough, that he still has that kind of mystique behind him. All he really needs to do is fight, hopefully relatively soon, against a top 10 lightweight and completely thrash him. And the star is undimmed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So obviously winning and losing does matter a little bit. People are not going to keep paying. And what happens with Connor or any of these when the casuals show up, and I don't mean casual as an insulting term. I know a lot of people use that. I don't mean insulting. I mean people who don't watch every week. They're casual too.
I envy them.
No, yeah, I know. They weren't thinking about this card all day long like we were, all week long. The pendulum swings too far, no matter what. You get, when he wins, oh my God, he's back. He's the best ever. Could he beat Mike Tyson, prime Mike Tyson in a boxing match? You get that one extreme. And then you always get the other extreme. Oh, he was too cocky. He was never that good. He sucks. He's terrible. You're always going to have that. That's what's going to happen. Of course, we're going to get all the Connor's terrible. He was never good. He's too cocky, blah, blah, blah. But people are still going to watch. But the one thing, there's a couple of things I'm worried about. Now, he did lose a lot of fans with some of the things he was doing outside. There was a civil lawsuit that came out this week. There's all kinds. I mean, we can go over his criminal history. We've done it a million times. Or I shouldn't say criminal, but any outside activities. That actually hurts. That gets old after a while. But also some of that stuff about his partying, him drinking the whiskey and being out at night, that does a toll on your body. I don't care who you are. I mean, there's a reason why there's very few athletes that can make it into their 40s because they don't treat their body that way. And if you don't treat your body good at all, which Connor's kind of been accused of doing, that would not be good at all. I'm not surprised if we suddenly have a huge drop. I wouldn't be shocked. No, I'm not predicting that. I still think he's one of the best. I think he's a big threat. If they fought a third time, if they did an immediate rematch, yeah, I think Poirier would be a favorite. But if I'm setting the line, I have it still pretty close. I put Conor at plus 125, Poirier minus 135. It'd be a close line. Yep. So let's talk about what's next for Poirier.
Okay.
Do you think, the talk of, Khabib, whether Khabib's coming back, Khabib said, don't make me upset my mom. He made it sound like he's definitely retired. Dana White sprinkled out there, if something spectacular happens this weekend, I'll come back. We'll get to the co-main event because that was pretty spectacular. But did Dustin Poirier do enough to make Khabib Nurmagomedov come out of retirement?
No.
Okay. I agree. I mean, when you
I don't
maul a
think
guy,
so. I like did Poirier do anything that would make you think a Nurmagomedov rematch would go differently?
no, absolutely not. No, I mean,
Me either.
I don't know what either guy would have done. I guess if Conor knocked out Poirier under 60 seconds, like if he made that prediction true, maybe that would have been enough. Still might not have. I mean, Khabib seems like somebody that would stick to his like morals, stick to. Yeah, he doesn't seem like someone who could be pressured. Like you see these things with Dana talking to him on the side. Like he doesn't seem like someone who'd give in to pressure.
No, he's always been very much his own man, marched to his own drum, doesn't especially need the money. I mean, I'm sure if they offered him $10 or $15 million for one last fight, it would be attractive, but it's clearly not attractive enough, or he would have taken it. I think I'll say this. I think there's a possibility that he comes out a couple of years down the road when we've stopped thinking and talking about him so much. But the only thing that would get him to come back before he really, really wants to would be a fight with George St. Pierre. He really seems fixated on that.
Yeah.
And because George knows that, he will price himself accordingly, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. I also think he still would need the blessing from his mom. Now, he might be like, hey, Mom, I need your blessing. This was, George St. Pierre's always been Dad's dream fight for me. Maybe that. But I still think he needs his mom's blessing. Before we move on, I want to give a shout out to all the people in the comments. We have a lot. I won't be able to get to all the questions or any comments. I'm just pointing at some. Francisco Slayer said Poirier is now a Hall of Famer. He probably might have already was, but definitely he's going to be a UFC Hall of Famer after this performance. And rightfully so. Of course, we got a lot of like matchmaking type things, like Poirier versus insert whoever. Drew Stott, I think he might misheard me, or maybe I misspoke. He said Poirier plus 125 is next fight. No, I was saying Conor would be probably about plus 125. If I'm making the line, I think Poirier would probably be negative 135. I apologize if I said that wrong, or if,
I thought you said it right, but
okay. It's 1:45 in the morning, so I might have said it wrong. Zebra Cheeks, I love that name. Zebra Cheeks asked an interesting question. He says, do you think a shift back to karate-based styles as opposed to his boxing stance would help? I'm assuming he's talking about Conor.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if he really changed his karate stance. I mean, he has a wide stance. He still has a wide stance. I don't know if he means more bladed, like kind of turning sideways.
Yeah. He came out with a similar stance. He wasn't quite as bladed. He didn't use his kicks as heavily as he did a few years ago. Like coming out of the same stance, he seemed to lead a lot more often with punching combinations tonight.
Yeah.
Against Poirier the first time, he threw almost nothing but kicks until he
Sure.
smacked him upside the head with that left hook.
Yeah, another thing that happens when he's also older. Was he 34 now? I mean,
he's only 32.
32. I'm sorry, I thought he was older than that. Yep. Yeah, it's one of those things like you see, like when kicking takes obviously so much energy. I know he did throw like a spinning wheel kick at one point and actually caught Graves, and didn't connect, but he caught him with pretty good. But like it's something we see in like a lot of wrestlers. All of a sudden, wrestlers stop wrestling as they get harder because it's just a hard thing to do. It takes a lot of energy. It's just really hard. That's why you see a lot of wrestling. I don't know if I know. I really take a lot of pride in my ability to kind of break down skills. I don't know if I know enough about like a difference between a karate stance and like the boxing stance. What the difference is. I mean, I get the general idea of the wide stance, the sideways. I don't see Conor getting too far away from that, but maybe you made a good point about not throwing enough kicks. Maybe that's something he needs to do more. I don't really know. Let's talk about. So we both agree Khabib's not coming out. So eventually they're going to have to. Khabib said he's not going to hold up the division. I'm assuming no brainer. Dustin Poirier after tonight's performance is in a title fight. You agree?
He is either in a title fight or he is just declared the champ.
Yeah, like they just announce it.
But I would say his next fight is for the vacant title. Who else could there possibly be?
Yeah, I really hope they don't just announce him the champion, because the big thing about his thing is he won the interim title, but he never won the actual title. I think he needs to have that, like, coming in, this is my chance. I know the title's on the line. I need to feel the pressure of the title and then actually win. Like, I actually don't want them to steal that moment from him.
And I said on the preview, I was kind of surprised they didn't make tonight's fight for at least an interim title.
Yeah.
That would either serve as a little additional hook to maybe taunt Khabib into coming back, or it would make for a smooth transition to them promoting them to undisputed champ when they decided that Khabib wasn't coming back. They never did it. So, yeah, I guess we need a title fight.
Well, I think the reason why they didn't do the interim, well, one, Conor is going to sell no matter what. Title, non-title, doesn't matter. But I also think you don't really want to necessarily tie Khabib's hands where it's saying, like, if you come back, you must face this guy. Like, you want to give him every option possible. Like, if you're going to come back, oh, you want George Smith? Sure. Oh, you were impressed by Michael Chandler and you some kind of Bellator thing you want to go with? Sure. Oh, you want to go up to welterweight? Sure. Like, whatever. So I think that's maybe why I wouldn't put the interim title on it. If it was two other guys and I was trying to sell a pay-per-view, maybe I throw an interim title on it, but I don't think it was needed with Conor. So we both said that Poirier's next fight will be for the title. We both said that Khabib won't be the guy standing across from him. So who is? If you're the matchmaker, who you putting in there?
Well, it's interesting. Sherdog associate editor Jay Petrie just asked me on Slack, is now the time for... Well, actually, we'll get to that later. Why not go with the hot hand? Michael Chandler looked absolutely amazing tonight.
He did. We'll get to that in a second, but yeah.
It's partly because of who won. Poirier already has so much history with other top 5 guys in the division. He's already fought most of them.
That's right. That's a good point. That's actually the point that when I was kind of making my points, that's the thing I was going to mention. You kind of, like, Michael Chandler was a big winner tonight, besides getting a win in his UFC debut and all that. But also, like you mentioned, who's the other contenders? Is Justin Gaethje? Well, not only did we see Dustin Poirier beat Justin Gaethje, but it was not that long ago.
It was not that long ago. If Hooker had beat Chandler tonight, I don't think that would have been enough to get him another fight with Poirier.
No.
He put on a fantastic performance at the perfect time.
Yeah. And you also get that bump. You figure there was more people watching tonight because of the massive amount of pay-per-views, because Conor, you have it as a co-main event, which is always going to boost your popularity. You get a spectacular knockout, and then you can add in, and obviously we're not watching the post-fight interviews, the post-fight press conference right now, but he had a very spirited in-cage interview, but he could also say, oh, Dustin Poirier is the guy tonight? Oh, yeah? He barely beat Dan Hooker. He had to go 25 minutes. I knocked him out in the first round. Like, this is what I do. I'm a big knockout artist. You go to the big, rant like that. Do it. Like, that might get you that title fight. So I agree with you. The next fight, I would go the hot hand too, and it would be Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler for the title. Let's go to Conor. He says he wants to have a quick turnaround. You said someone in the top 10. I will go first this time. I'm going to go with the obvious choice. I know they were trying to do Nate Diaz versus Justin Gaethje. I don't believe that's official yet. I think they're still working on it. To me, that's a terrible stylistic matchup. You're also killing Nate Diaz's stock a little bit. To me, you need a fight that's winnable. You also need a fight that's going to sell. You need that kind of B-side. You have the trilogy there. To me, the only fight to do for Conor, which for some reason I don't think they're going to do it. But the one I would do is I would do the trilogy fight. That would still headline a pay-per-view. It would still do very massive. The lead-up was still good. Maybe bad guy Conor comes back out for Nate Diaz. That's what I would do. What would you do?
I think I would do that as well. It doesn't make perfect sense from a competitive standpoint. He probably deserves someone who's been a little more active and a little hotter recently, but he hasn't been that active or that successful himself recently, so maybe it makes perfect sense. That was actually Jay Petrie's question. Is it time to make Conor Diaz 3? I think they have to, if only because it has to be getting close to its expiration date as a blockbuster. They've had this in their back pocket for 5 years now or something, just knowing that this thing will be huge whenever they decide to do it. That isn't true forever. Now might be the time. And I think Diaz's style just on the mic at press conferences will kind of bring the heel back out of McGregor a little bit.
Yeah. And it seemed like a lot of people have had a sense of relief. Like, it seemed like people were getting a little stale of Conor, the bad guy, the trash talker. It seemed like people were really enjoying this. Obviously not everybody. You know me. I love the trash talk. So I think they'll bring back. But I'm looking at the comments. A lot of people in the chat. A lot of people throwing out Tony Ferguson. That was another obvious choice. The reason why I think in the comments, the YouTube comments, we're seeing Tony Ferguson is, well, these are the hardcore fans. Let's be honest. These are the guys who are watching a recap show.
Yep.
They are interested in Tony Ferguson, which I'm sorry. One buddy said, I apologize. I'm trying to scroll through. One of them said, our buddy Zebra Cheeks again. I love that name. Said,
Zebra Cheeks, forum moderator and member of the Pick'em. He's in the Pick'em with us.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry, I apologize to Zebra Cheeks for not knowing that.
He's probably beating me right now.
Oh, I did terrible. I might be at the bottom. I don't think both of us did very bad. He says that Tony versus Conor still sells over 1 million. Yeah, it totally does. But so does Diaz. But I think we're hardcore fans. Like, we want to see that fight. If you poll just 100 people who watch this pay-per-view, scattering hardcore, scattering casuals, that Diaz fight would, in my opinion, obviously I'm not doing a poll here, I think the Diaz fight would be the more popular pick. Let's move on. We said Michael Chandler. We can kind of skip his matchmaking. We both given him Dustin Poirier, but what a... Okay, so I said that nobody deserves that win over Conor McGregor more than Dustin Poirier, that just nice moment. Nobody deserved a fantastic UFC debut than Michael Chandler. You mean this guy was the flag bearer for Bellator for so long. I was watching with a bunch of friends. I'd call one of them a hardcore, two of them not casual, but not super casual, but casuals, and then like one super casual fan, like asking me about the rules and stuff. And he asked me, like, oh, so what is Bellator? Is that, what you always get? Is that, like, the minor leagues? And I tried to explain, like, it's hard to explain. Like, no, it's not the minor leagues. It's more WWE versus WCW kind of thing. Not, with maybe a little bit of watered down, but there's still some top guys. Well, that's what Chandler's had to hear. He had to hear, like, oh, you're not in the UFC. You're a minor league guy. I mean, how many wins has he had in Bellator? And he, in fairness... Like, we'll take some blame. He wasn't rising up on the Sherdog rankings. Like, was either, if he was in our rankings, he was a honorable mention, not in the top 10 kind of thing like that.
No. Now, in fairness, he was in the Sherdog top 10 consistently for years until he lost twice in a row to Will Brooks. Then Will Brooks came over to the UFC and completely shit the bed.
Like, that was a long time ago.
We do have to go, yeah. And then he started to bounce back up, and then he got flatlined by a featherweight.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But
and then he also had that weird Brent Primus loss. Like, every time he got some momentum, happened. But tonight, I mean, he had a lot of pressure on him. I think a lot of people were counting him out. He was a slight underdog. It seemed like I did a poll in the MMA Takeover Facebook group, and it was like 85% was taking Hooker. And Michael Chandler made an absolute statement. He's always had power, but the power was on display. And in my opinion, Dan Hooker had a perfect strategy. He was trying to do an outfight. He was kicking at the legs, which we've seen. Brent Primus had obviously light sex. I don't want to go into the whole leg kick thing again, the calf kick again, but everything we said about Conor, well, guy's got power. Take away his power. Guy can't wrestle as much if he can't explode off his legs. We're not gonna have that great insight. Like, Hooker had the strategy.
And if you haven't, not you, but anyone watching, if you haven't watched Chandler's last 20 fights, like I have, he has been finished by a leg kick before. Leg kick just gave him, drop foot, and he fell onto his face. He couldn't move. As soon as Hooker started landing those, I was like, oh man, are we going to see someone just hit that little nerve cluster and this thing's going to be over? No, Hooker had a fantastic strategy, and I don't think the UFC is always diabolical and calculating in their matchmaking. So I don't think this was necessarily them trying to sewer Chandler, because they need fresh faces in the division, obviously. But he was a guy that I thought it was going to be really tough for Chandler to look good against for that very reason. The thing that I was worried about Chandler losing, as he's aged into his 30s, just being a short guy who's gotten by on explosion, is his ability to close the distance on taller fighters who know how to fight and outfight. As you said, Hooker did that, really did it well. It didn't matter. Chandler got inside and landed his punches countered kicks with punches, and it was somebody in the Sherdog Slack, and I would look it up and give him credit by name, but said it was the one that finished it was like the Mark Hunt body to head. That Mark Hunt, always a short guy for his division with explosion, even though he looked kind of round and tubby, was always very explosive and crushing power. It was pure Hunto. You're muted.
I'm sorry. The go low, go high thing that he did on Stefan Struve, like that we always see in his highlight reel,
Yep.
that kind of stand there. Yeah. So you mentioned about like the leg kicks getting to Michael Chandler. I actually thought the ending of that fight when he said it, like you see how red it was. I thought it was going to look like a lot like the ending of Poirier versus Conor, like him starting to reach down and then that opens up the chin and then Hooker gets him, or he just brutalizes him with it. But once he got inside, he really got inside for one burst, and that's all he did. He hit him to the body, dropped his hand, and crushed his power. And we didn't even see his wrestling. So,
who has ever done that to Dan Hooker?
Dan
Hooker
Barboza,
spent 15.
Yeah.
He spent 15 minutes on the gunnery range with Edson Barboza, just taking everything one of the most breathtaking offensive fighters of the era could dish out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not straight apples to apples, obviously, but
sure.
What a jaw-dropping performance.
I think about Dustin Poirier. I mean, every single person who's fought Dustin Poirier has talked about his power. Max Holloway talked about his power. People who've trained with him talked about his power. I was just talking. I was talking to Tyson Chartier about Calvin Kattar's power, and we were talking about Anthony Rockamont, who's trained with both Poirier and Calvin Kattar, and he said if Calvin Kattar hits hard, but Dustin Poirier is still the hardest person to hit him. And that's a welterweight saying that about a lightweight who was a former featherweight. Yeah. So, yeah, and Dan Hooker went 25 minutes and 8 shots from Dustin Poirier. So, Michael Chandler, shout out to him. Before we move on from the co-main event, because it was a short fight. There's not too much to take away other than the. Well, let me ask you this. Let's do the Bellator angle because this always gets asked. Is Bellator happy at this moment, or are they sad? Like, are they sad that, like, wow, Michael Chandler might be a star for somebody else, and we put all this work in him? Or are they happy, like, there you go, guys. We've had a lot of fighters from our company go over there and have success. So, obviously, the perfect example, a guy that Michael Chandler will always be connected to, Eddie Alvarez won the title. Was it a good moment, or was it a bad moment for Bellator?
I think it's a good moment.
I agree.
I think it's probably, if you asked Scott Coker to kind of draw out the arc, he would say, have this guy become our greatest homegrown star, possibly our most accomplished champion ever. And just as he's kind of getting into the last act of his career, then have him go over there and he could either kind of raise the stock for everybody or, if it doesn't quite pan out, well, he was 34. He'd had a couple of bad losses. So it's not when I would have wished Chandler would come over. I wished it had been 5 years ago, but it's probably obviously the best time for Coker because he's over here, and this was the best possible outcome because it kind of validates what's going on over there.
Yeah. No, I expect the next press conference someone asks him about Michael Chandler, and he's going to say the exact kind of things, bring up Eddie Alvarez. This is what we expected. And then with Chandler rising and people mentioning Bellator, maybe more people like my friend Leo won't look at him as a minor league, and they say, oh, well, these guys are really good, and then that actually blossoms into other stars. Or Bellator can spin it with, oh, Michael Chandler's a star? Yeah, well, our featherweight knocked him out in whatever the time was, 1 minute and whatever, So there's so many ways they can spin it. I think it's a good thing.
I would love it, though, if, like, my more casual friends all of a sudden kind of got interested in Bellator, and I had to tap the brakes and be like, no, their undercards really are shit.
Yeah, and suddenly we have to do Bellator recap shows.
Yeah.
One thing before we move on, Dan Hooker, they said he threw his gloves in the cage. That's usually a sign of retirement. Usually you put it right in the middle, you hang it down. I'm assuming overreaction. I hardly ever believe retirements, even though we were just talking about saying we believe Khabib's retirement. I'm not saying he's retiring, right?
No. Okay. I have the feeling. I was looking to see if we already had a story up, but my guess would be that that's being cleared up at the post-fight press conference as we speak. I expect that he was just frustrated, dejected, and didn't really think about the symbolic,
Yeah. I agree.
Because if that's what it was, he would have deserved an in-cage interview for that.
Oh, absolutely. Before that, we had a kind of grudge match. I didn't realize it was such a grudge match, but a grudge match when I saw the embedded, and that was between Jessica Ai and Joanne Calderwood. Joanne Calderwood won a unanimous decision. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic performance from Joanne Calderwood. I've never, so before we did the previous show, I was saying I wasn't too high on either one of them. They felt like they always, every time you see something from them, they would like trip over a hurdle. I thought it was a fantastic, like this is the best performance in my opinion of Joanne Calderwood's probably career, based on who she fought, what, the atmosphere, how it was. Her output was incredible. Like, she didn't slow down. Her output was tremendous. Her clinch striking, her knees up the middle. I mean, she made Jessica Ai work the entire time, and she came in kicking range, she got kicked. She came in clinch range, she got clinched in knees, she caught elbows. I mean, she cut her up at the very end. I mean, it was just a really, really good performance. What was your thoughts on this fight?
Fantastic performance by Calderwood, and it was against a version of Ai who appeared to be very healthy, and for what it's worth, fought a good Jessica Ai fight. The first round, I see that all of Sherdog's official scorers gave it to Calderwood. I actually scored the first round for Ai, but either way, it was definitely Ai's best round, and she did smart things. She initiated the clinch, and even though it's not a ton of fun to watch, she just kind of mashed her into the cage. And while Calderwood was getting the better of the clinch exchanges by the end, the first round, I thought I was winning most of the clinch exchanges. And there, just her physical strength kind of worked to her advantage. She ended up giving Calderwood, or being forced to give Calderwood, the distance game that Calderwood wanted by the second and definitely the third round. And yeah, second and third round, I was coming in like this, and Calderwood was just giving her front kicks right to the gut. She was on the wrong end of Calderwood's strikes for the last 10 minutes of the fight, and it was really one-sided by the end, I thought.
Yeah, I don't remember who I gave the first round to. I don't even really remember the clinch too well, but I do remember moments in the clinch that I was trying to, Randy Couture it, dirty box it with the punches on the outside, punches straight up the middle, and you can't match punches with knees going up the middle. You're not going to be, your knee is a bigger, harder bone than a hand. It's not going to work out for you. And just a really good performance. Before we move on, because we spent so much time on the main event, did this set up Joanne Calderwood for a title shot? I mean, I know John Anik kind of mentioned it in the cage. He mentioned about how she was supposed to get a title shot.
She still might.
I think it is.
She lost, very famously. She was lined up for one. She didn't want to wait while Valentina Shevchenko recovered from injury, so she took a stay busy fight against Jennifer Maia that turned out to be a poor career move, if brave. But she looked fantastic tonight against another fairly recent title challenger. And the fact is, there's nobody in this division, well, with one or two exceptions that are working their way up, that's going to be, any better than like a plus 700 underdog against Shevchenko. So just feed Shevchenko, people. She hasn't fought yet. Yeah. If I had won tonight, it wouldn't have been enough, but Calderwood hasn't fought her yet.
I agree. So to me, there's really three people in line, and it's going to be, I don't know if anybody is like leading the race. You have while I was looking down, I was pulling up the UFC rankings, make sure I wasn't forgetting anybody, but you have Jessica Andrade, the former champion in another weight class, obviously got a big win. Lauren Murphy, who just seems like just trugging along, kind of keeping herself in it, and now Joanne Calderwood. Of those three people, I would wait on Jessica Andrade fight. I try to like that simmer, hope she gets some more wins and kind of get a little more buzz in that matchup. I would probably do Lauren Murphy just because that's the purest in me. She's ahead of her in the rankings, but I won't be surprised at all if they go with Joanne Calderwood. Before that, we had a prelim fight that got all the way promoted to the main card based on, was it prelim or it might even been an early prelim. I don't remember where it was in the order. got promoted all the way to the main card based on some crazy stuff that happened this week, which we'll get to later. We had Mahmoud Muradov versus Andrew Sanchez. Apologize if I don't have that name correct. I'm trying to work on
it. No, it's Sanchez.
Nice. Good. Nice job there. I don't know if I have my Uzbekistan pronunciations down perfect. But Muradov won by third round TKO. To me, it was just too fast. Too fast, playing with fire. Something we both picked it kind of similar to this way. We picked it a little earlier. To me, Sanchez is a wrestler. And he didn't wrestle enough. I don't remember if he wrestled much at all. And he was just too slow. I mean, Muradov's a much better striker. He's longer. He knows how to use it better, more technical. And chin is always... I shouldn't say chin is an issue by Sanchez because he doesn't get knocked out a lot, but he's always rocked. Like that, when his legs kind of gave out to him, that's something we've seen in Andrew Sanchez's fights so many times.
Yeah.
Like, he needs to know he has to protect that. And Muradov's not the guy to go out and strike with.
It was interesting. I think of Sanchez as actually an improving striker. I don't know. He's never going to be Israel Adesanya, but he's been on his way to being a very functional, high-level wrestle boxer. You know, your favorite animal in the wild. But he tends to get the worst of it when he's not the better wrestler in the cage. When he doesn't have that safety valve, if things aren't going his way on the feet, it's not up to him to determine where the fight takes place. Against Muradov, he tried in the second round, but he really didn't in the first. And I don't know if he thought he could strike with him, or he was like, oh man, you know, this Russian dude with the foreguard, I'm never going to be able to wrestle with him. I don't know what the game plan was, but he tried in the second round for some takedowns and he was denied. But yeah, the kicks and the speed differential on the feet were just a killer. I was actually mildly surprised that it went for as long as it did. Like, guts to Sanchez for making it that long. It was a mauling.
Yeah, I agree. I want to. I think there's some really good comments in the YouTube feed. I want to throw out a shout out to Drew Stout. We did forget about a possible Khabib matchup, and that would be Khabib versus Jake Paul. that might be the matchup to get him out of retirement.
you shut your mouth. Don't even will or manifest that shit into existence.
Before that, we had a massive upset. I don't have the betting line in front of me, but Marina Rodriguez knocked out Amanda Ribas. I know you had some pay-per-view trouble. Did you get to see this fight at all?
No, I caught the end, you know, thanks to the magic of GIFs, but that's it. I didn't see the actual fight.
Okay, so I'm going to just focus on Marina Rodriguez for a second because we saw the best and the worst of Marina Rodriguez. In the first round, we saw the worst of her, and that was a girl who struggles to stop takedowns and struggles to get up top. And Amanda Ribas looked fantastic. She took her down. She suffocated her on top. She landed some shots. She did what we expected her to do. And then the second round, she played with fire, and Marina Rodriguez is a good striker. She's long, she hits hard, and she starched Amanda Ribas. She caught her with a perfect shot. I think it was a right hand. I apologize if I have it wrong, but I think it was a right hand.
It was a right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. She kind of stumbled on her face. She comes in. We'll get to the Herb Dean in a second. She comes in and starts hammering her several times. Herb Dean kind of fake stopped it. She pulled away, was told, no, the fight's still on, and then finished the job. It was a standing knockout. Amanda Ribas was flopping around like Andrew Sanchez did, but didn't go down. That stoppage was a perfect stoppage. I think it was and I'm talking about the second stoppage, the when she's on her feet. I think we might have. I don't know. I'm really torn on Marina Rodriguez because unless she improves her ground game, she's still going to struggle with your girl she lost to last time, Carla Esparza, Claudia Gadelha, Juliana Pena, not Pena. Who am I thinking of? The tall wrestler.
Velasquez.
Juliana Velasquez. Yeah. Like, she's going to struggle with those girls. Mm-hmm. I thought she was going to struggle with Amanda Ribas, but obviously she didn't. I think in a weird sense, a knockout here might actually hurt Rodriguez if she doesn't improve her wrestling, because she just made a statement like, "Do not stand with me, or you're going to get knocked out," and it's going to force girls to want to wrestle and take her down like much quicker than they already have been.
Well, which is fine as long as it doesn't make her think like Happy Gilmore hitting the hole-in-one on the par 4, where he's like, man, that was easy. I should do that instead of learning to putt. As long as it doesn't make her overconfident and doesn't stop her from continuing to work on her takedown defense and her ground game, I think the book's already written on what her opponents need to do with her.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're in the danger zone as long as you're on the feet with her. There just aren't many women at 115 pounds who have that kind of stopping power.
Yeah, so Amanda Ribas, on the hand, she was the hot prospect. She's one that a lot of people wanted to crown. I was driving the bandwagon. I am still driving it. Like, I'm going to take this as a mistake. She made a mistake. She got caught. As long as her chin isn't completely destroyed because of this, I think she'll be fine. I think she actually could come back to be a better fighter. Anything else you want to say about this before we move on?
Really? No. The Sherdog Pick'em picked 2 fights unanimously tonight. This was one of them. We were wrong both times. We collected 2 big whiffs, all 16 of us. Wow. I think I thought both these women, had top 10, if not title contention potential before this fight. I still think so.
Yeah, I do too. We got to talk about Herb Dean for a second. Herb Dean, to his credit, from my angle, it looked like he never touched Marina Rodriguez when she was punching him. My issue is you can't do one of these come in fake things. Like, you can't come in looking close and then kind of jump in like, oh, I need to stop it, and then last second kind of put your hands up and pull back. That's what I saw, and I understand why Marina Rodriguez thought it was over. Paul Felder made a good point where he says this is why fighters continue to hit people when they're unconscious, and fans wonder why. That is why, because of moments like Herb Dean did. Not a good look. Thoughts?
Not a good look. I don't know why I feel bad piling on, but I feel bad piling on because I'm generally a nice guy. But it's not just that he's not the best in the business anymore, like they used to say every fight out 8 years ago. He's not even one of the better in the business. Like, he's not even above the median line, at least when it comes to people that ref big shows. And I think it's funny because obviously I watch and kind of deal with a lot of Russian and former Soviet state MMA, and he is the guy that ACA will fly out there as kind of their celebrity ref to ref fights with, some local guys.
Sure.
And I don't know why, other than the name recognition. You can make mistakes as a ref. They're all human, but you can't be hesitant and freeze. And a lot of his mistakes recently are like this, where he's like, what am I doing? I've never, done this before, even though he's ref thousands of fights. It's so strange that he's kind of like lost his mojo.
Yeah, I'll say it's been a long time since Frank Mir armbarred Tim Sylvia and he stopped the fight, rightfully so. Like, it's like that moment we crowned him the greatest referee, and for some reason he's kept that title. I don't want to pile on him too much because I think referees only get mentioned when they make a bad stoppage, generally speaking. This just was not a good night. Not a good weekend for Ottoman Zatar, who was supposed to fight Matt Frivola. I still don't know the whole story, but him and his team... Nobody
knows the whole story. Yeah. We all want to know what the fuck was in the bag.
Like, that's 7 part 2. I don't know. Him and his friend gave a the wristband to some random person. Might have been a friend. Might have been
who snuck into the fighter hotel, went into a different room, snuck like out to the balconies, and like climbed around like some
Spider-Man
James Bond movie. Yeah, to give him a bag of something. And Otman Azatar, undefeated, hot prospect, out of the UFC, off the card instantly, and like instantly to the point of like basically immediately escorted out of the fighter quarantined area.
Yeah. I just thought of like the best meme be like, what was in Ottoman Azatar's bag, and then they start opening the bag and it's just Bernie Sanders. Like, yeah, or that just seems like something like Mike Perry would do, or Diego Sanchez would do, or as this mystery man was climbing through the balconies across the wall, there's like Diego doing yoga out on a balcony or something. Anyways, so his fight got canceled with Matt Frivola. Arman Sarukian was supposed to fight Nasrat Haqparast. That fight was canceled due to an illness to Haqparast. I'm assuming weight cutting issue. The two guys ended up getting matched together, and I feel bad for both guys because both had such a drastic style. Like Sarukian had to go against Frivola, who's probably he's a better wrestler than Haqparast is, and then Frivola had to go from a guy who's a heavy hitting Zadar to a very heavy wrestling based guy, which is what Frivola wanted to do. I give credit to both these guys. I mean, to be willing to step up, I say that both guys have some huge packages, huge balls. Good for them.
Yep. Don't need to ask what's in their bag.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarukian, I just love this guy's style. I just love his potential. He just looks so good. Even though it's different style. I mean, it was a fun, competitive matchup for the first round. Just his heavy wrestling base was going to eventually beat out Frivola's. He's only 24 years old. He just looks like, I said it before the preview, I'm doubling down. He just looks like a top 10 guy in the future. Like, I love this guy.
He does. And it should be a cautionary tale that I'm making this comparison, but reminds me a little of Gregor Gillespie.
Yeah.
Just same number of fights into his UFC career.
Sure.
But I for what it's worth, I liked Frivola's approach to the fight. Like, you're getting a fighter on short notice, but you know exactly what he's bringing to the table stylistically, and you know he blew weight. So he tried to push the pace early on, and there seemed to be almost the philosophy there of, I know this guy's going to out-wrestle me, but damn, I'm going to make him work for it. And if I can survive, maybe I can get something going late. It didn't work. Just Sarukian's that good, and his gas tank was fine. But I thought it was a smart strategy on Frivola's part.
Yeah, Zebra Cheeks made a good comparison. He said you took the B side of an early prelim fight and the A side of a featured prelim bout. It was never going to be close. I mean, it wasn't close in the betting lines, but I think the fight was closer early. Like, it was pretty competitive. I mean, at one point, Frivola actually somewhat hit a lateral drop, which is always fun. I did have to throw in the word huge package because I take notes while I'm doing the fights. And while I was taking notes, I had a bunch of friends around. I got up to go to the bathroom, and my friend wrote underneath this one, huge package. He also put great nuts. He just started putting notes in there, and I saw it, and I said, well, all right, I'll throw it out there. So there you go. That's why the huge package kept brought in there. Shout out to my friend Mike, who stole my notebook. Before that, we had Brad Tavares versus... Okay, you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say one last thing. It's not surprising to me that Nasrat Haqparast had trouble making weight, because I'm still not sure that he exists. I think he's actually Kelvin Gastelum trying to double dip and get more purses. And we see how much trouble he has making even welterweight. So, we see you, Kelvin.
Yeah, so I'll let you know into my weird mind what I do, like when I'm watching a stream of the weigh-ins, and you have that like gap. You have like the first rush of weigh-ins, and you have like a gap, and say there's like 7 or 8 fighters left. I start ranking them in order who I'm most worried about. And I was like, this guy because he's a flyweight, this guy, and then, but Haqparast was one of the guys who was a big gap. And I said, I had him ranked high on who I was worried about. I said, because he looks like Kelvin Gastelum. Like, that's why he was super high.
But that whole thing is called the Johnny Hendricks hour.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
What can we say?
Before that, we had Brad Tavares versus Antonio Carlos Jr. I thought it was a really fun fight. I think both guys had good performances from what they have to deal with their skill set. To me, the difference in this fight, and I think it was rightfully scored for Brad Tavares, is Brad Tavares made every moment difficult. Like, even when Antonio Carlos Jr. got the positions he wanted, Tavares kept scrambling, he kept moving, he was digging underhook. He just made him work and just made it difficult. And that was the difference. And when he had his moments, he was capitalizing on them. And what do you have to say about this fight?
I couldn't have said that any better, so instead I will say it worse. the booth was talking a lot about what a clinic this was in takedown defense, but takedown defense doesn't matter unless you are making the other person pay in some way for trying the takedown. Like, if in a vacuum, one fighter attempts 8 takedowns and only lands one of them, or even only lands 0 of them, he still won the round. He forced the action and put you on the defensive. What was great about Tavares' performance is he managed to fight off these takedowns in a way that was making Shoeface work harder. Like, if you're fighting off a takedown with an underhook and a wide leg, and the other guy is bending at the waist and trying to suck your hips out, he is burning 5 times as many calories as you are.
That's right.
And we're already talking about like a gigantic middleweight in why can I not say his real name? I keep just saying Shoeface, Cardi Sapacho. Like,
yeah.
Antonio Carlos Jr. Is already a big dude, so you know he was getting anaerobic. Yeah, it was just really smart performance by Tavares.
Yeah, you're making the guy's back work. You're making his biceps work. You're burning him out. That's not going to work out good for you. Yeah, just a really – and Brad Tavares has been out for a while. Like, I know when I was breaking down the fight, I was just worried about a long layoff, a guy who he's been fighting sporadically. He hasn't won a fight in over 3 years, before this one, obviously. Just a really good showing. And then Antonio Carlos Jr., like, he's good, but I feel like I've kind of discovered him. Like, there's a ceiling. He's hit that ceiling. If you're a top 12, 15-ish guy, he's probably going to struggle with you. And that's what we saw tonight.
I agree, because, I mean, if you extended the rankings out far enough to reach Brad Tavares, he's about the highest ranked middleweight that would be this favorable a style matchup on paper for Antonio Carlos Jr., and he couldn't pull it off against him. He's a lot of fun to watch, and when he fights guys that he can get his game rolling against, I love to see some jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I think we've seen his ceiling.
Before that, we had Juliana Pena defeating the Mark Coleman of women's MMA, Sarah McMann. Juliana Pena won by 3rd round submission. She just dug deep. I know I'm not giving the most technical analysis, but she was more mentally strong. She, on the feet, even though I thought she was losing the early striking exchanges, she was forcing Sarah McMann to fight off her back foot, to kind of pressure, to make her feel uncomfortable, even though she's winning the striking exchanges. It's not how she wanted to win them. And then, when she was taken down, she was landing elbows on the bottom. She was slapping her ear. She was just keeping her busy, cutting her up on them. She was not letting her settle into the guard where she wanted to be. And she just kept working, very similar to what we were just talking about, Brad Tavares. And then she finally found her back and put her and ended it. Just a good performance from Juliana Pena, a really bad performance from Sarah McMann. She just has not improved at all since she made her UFC debut. She's a good wrestler. She's got some good in close natural power, but she struggles with submission defense. She struggles with the fight gets she's a bully, and when people push back on her, she struggles.
Calling her the Mark Coleman of women's MMA works in more ways than one.
That's
not just the arms. Yeah, not just the arms, but just the hasn't
style.
Quite. Yeah. The only thing I'd say X's and O's wise, we both hate when people try to defend a takedown by grabbing a guillotine and just going to their back. But there's a difference between grabbing a front headlock when you're still out over your hips, where, you have options, and just the person getting so far in on their shot that you're already going to your butt and you're just grabbing a guillotine because your only other option is really just to go to your back. That's more what Pena had. McMahon's entries were still good enough that Pena just had no prayer of fighting off those first couple takedowns. Like, she grabbed guillotines, but she was already on her butt by then, which makes McMahon frustrating because there are things that she does so well. And it's the Mark Coleman thing. It's the Bang Ludwig thing. It's if they could just master this other thing, they'd be so awesome. And McMahon is 40, and I don't think it's happening. This is exactly what it would have looked like if the Rousey fight hadn't been arguably stopped early, all those years ago. Unmute.
I apologize.
Yep, you're good.
On the live setting, I usually can hit when we do recording. I usually can mute my mic on the screen. I can't do it now, so that's why I keep. If you're looking, I keep looking down and hitting a button. The thing that probably got the most talk about this fight was the post-fight interview with the weirdest take ever when Juliana Pena suddenly accused Amanda Nunes of ducking a girl who was on a losing. It was lost her previous fight. Yeah, really, like, the GOAT, you're saying the GOAT, like, call for the fight. Like, say, I want that fight, I think I deserve it. I don't know if beating Sarah McMann and being on a one-fight winning streak makes you deserve a title shot, but in that division, maybe. But, like, make it make sense. Don't, like, make it sound like the girl was ducking you. It's Amanda Nunes. Like, she fought Chris Cyborg. Like, she fought Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey. Like, you're not ducking Juliana Pena.
Amanda Nunes has a stoppage win over every other woman who has ever held a title at bantamweight or featherweight in the UFC or Bellator.
Yeah.
Plus 2 wins over Valentina Shevchenko, who's probably the greatest flyweight ever.
Yeah.
To imply that Amanda Nunes is ducking anybody is high comedy, but especially if you're somebody who's been alternating wins and losses and you only fight about once a year anyway, why does anybody need to duck?
Yeah, no, I know. It was, and Nina Ansaroff kind of blasted her a little bit on Twitter for it. She got a good response, like, "Well, you would have fought, but if you didn't lose twice." Having
said that, I wouldn't mind seeing the fight.
I mean, I know what's gonna happen.
Got to be somebody.
Yeah, I mean, if she wants to be the next slaughter for Amanda Nunes, more power to you, Juliana Pena. Speaking of losing. But Khalil Rountree has lost again, and this time he was a massive favorite. I think this was the other unanimous pick by Sherdog that we all got wrong?
It was the other unanimous pick.
Oof.
Khalil Rountree over Marcin Prachnio, all 16 of us. And I believe almost all of us had Rountree by knockout. I believe you and I both had Rountree by first round knockout.
Yeah.
I had my first round knockout.
Yeah. Prachnio... You just can't bet against that guy. That's what it comes down to. No, reason. So I actually liked when I put it on Twitter, like, what was everyone's favorite bet? Just any line. And my favorite bet of the night was this fight on the under. And what I looked at was Prachnio lost 3 fights in a row by first round knockout, and Khalil Rountree in his last 4 fights, 3 of the fights stopped in first round. So in his 7-fight combination, 6 of them was first round stoppages. So I'm like, bet the under 1.5. Well, I got that one wrong. So don't listen to me for best betting advice on Twitter. A couple things stood out to me. Well, first of all, this was the closest fight. This was the fight that had some dissension on MMA decisions. Who did you score it for?
I scored it for Prachnio.
Okay.
I don't mind being wrong. I gave him the first and third, I believe.
Yeah. So I don't want to say what my scorecard, because I had a group of friends and we were kind of talking and we would, I wasn't sitting down scoring it. But my friend Leo, the one I mentioned earlier, the casual, he said, like, as soon as they announced it, like, what? That guy won? And I said, well, you have to understand how scoring works. And I said, well, let me explain to you. Was the first round close? He's like, yeah. I said, was the third round close? Yeah. Was the second round close? No, that's what he killed him. I said, yeah. So he won 1 round and 2 rounds were up in the air. If you give the other 2 rounds to the other guy, then the guy wins. Then when he kind of explained it to him, and what I like about my friend Leo is he's willing to learn. He's not a casual, knows it all. So I explained it, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, I wasn't scoring that one close enough, but yeah, Prachnio. It comes down to the volume of Prachnio versus the power of Rountree. Like, what did you value more? And the judges valued the volume of Prachnio. You valued the volume of Prachnio. 2 things also stood out to me. In a good sense, suddenly Prachnio has a chin because Rountree smashed him with big shots and he didn't go down. And the other thing that stood out to me is somehow Rountree kind of had some cardio still. Like he's the guy he faded out late, and he did fade out again. He wasn't completely gassed out by the end of the fight. So I'm trying to find some positives in a fight that I expected to be quick and brutal.
That's pretty much it. I agree, especially on the cardio thing. He slowed down, but almost everybody at at 205 slows down by the end of the third round. He was still throwing effective offense. He still could have won the fight. I don't know if that's to his credit or not, but yeah, he was still throwing effective offense. He was still landing some things, even if I thought he lost the round. I have no idea what this guy's ceiling is. He just alternates looking like a world beater and looking like a bum from one fight to the next. And I don't mean that to be insulting. I think if he's being honest, he'd probably say the same about his own performances.
Sure. You mentioned earlier about guys jumping on guillotines to defend takedowns. Well, Nick Lentz almost pulled off a guillotine several times on Movsar Evloev we almost had another massive upset as Nick Lentz lost a split decision, which was kind of head-scratching to me because I thought Evloev clearly won. I like Evloev. The guy's, I think he's 14-0 now. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He's well-rounded. I love the way that Lentz got him in submissions, and he stayed calm, found a way to fight out of the sub, find scrambles. He's got good wrestling, which we saw today, like to out-wrestle Nick Lentz, former Division I NCAA wrestler. Clean striking, and I liked his output. Like he put up a massive strike amount on Nick Lentz. Nick Lentz is even at this point in his career, he's going to make it a tough, grimy fight because that's what Nick Lentz does. To me, this is the right test for Evloev in his career, and I thought he had, and I actually liked that he got caught in guillotine, so he had to overcome some adversity, and to me, it just makes me even more high on this guy.
Yeah, in his last two fights now, he has beaten two very good wrestlers by being the better wrestler. His striking looked very much on point tonight. In the preview, I think we both mentioned, I know that I did, that Lentz has gradually improved his striking over the years. Yeah. He's added more weapons to his arsenal. He has better footwork. He throws in combination better than he did at the beginning of his UFC career. Unfortunately, it's just coming into play as he's, going into his mid to late 30s. And just the speed and power differential was so glaring once they were exchanging on the feet.
Yeah. Yeah, really good showing. And before that, we had, and guys, I apologize. I'm going to try my best with I think this is Afghani name, Zulgas Zumag.
He is from Kazakhstan.
Oh, I apologize. My Middle Eastern countries I have wrong. Zulgas Zumagilov and Amir Albazi. Albazi won a decision. This was a fun fight. A lot of people gave Zumagilov the first round. I didn't. I gave it a clean sweep for Albazi. Albazi looks really good. He's well-rounded. I loved his ability to strike. He was really putting the jab on Zamuglia. I love his constant pressure. He was winning with his pressure. And he's 27, so he's kind of just reaching his prime. And to me, he looks like a nice addition to the flyweight division, which we're always, obviously, both of us are fans of the flyweights. It's good to see some new blood, newer blood. I noticed that wasn't his debut. And what I really liked is when he was either up 3-0 or 2-1 late in the fight. While he didn't get the finish, he was still looking for the finish. I really like that. What was your thoughts on the fight?
Same as you. I did give the first round to Zumagilov, but it's one of those fights where both men, if possible, came off looking good. I came off at least as high on both guys' stock as I was. I think we both think these guys both have top 15 at least written all over them in the flyweight division, maybe more than that for Albazi. Yeah. It's still, even though it was beep, beep, like flatlining a little over a year ago, there still just aren't that many flyweights in the UFC. So it's not that, it's not that long a road to contention.
Yeah, and Zumagilov is now 0-2 in the UFC, but didn't have bad showings in either one of them.
And the last one, again, Raulian Paiva missed weight by half a weight class, and I thought Zumagilov won anyway. I think he gets a total mulligan for that. And then here he lost a close, entertaining fight to a future top 10 guy. But keep him around. I'm sure we'll get to that soon, though.
Yeah, so there you have it, guys. We have covered all the fights in depth. We're going to get into the fun stuff. Before we get into the fun stuff, do you have the awards for the evening?
Yeah, I have the awards for the evening. There were 4 performances of the night. They go to Dustin Poirier. Of
course.
Mahmoud Muradov.
Okay.
Marina Rodriguez and Michael Chandler.
Okay. I like you leaving Michael Chandler at the end. I thought it was oh, good. No way did he not get one. We'll get to the fun stuff. We'll start with the cut list. I shouldn't say fun when we say cut list. The way the cut list works, guys, is If both me and Ben agree that someone should be cut from the UFC, we're given our approval for the UFC to cut them. Not that they listen to us, but they have to be on both my and Ben's list. I have one guy. I thought about two. I'll tell you who the guy I thought of. I thought about putting Khalil Roundtree, but I thought the fight was close enough. And Khalil Roundtree, while he's not good, when he wins, it's exciting. So I would give him one more chance. The one guy on the cut list was actually a guy who's in an exciting bout, but he's lost 3 fights in a row. He's up there in age. I'd get rid of Nick Glenz.
I agree. I'm good with that. Lentz can go, especially considering that he competes at 2 weight divisions that the UFC is not in need of bodies, featherweight or lightweight. There are plenty of just another guys out there. I'm good with that. I can't believe that Marcin Prachnio is not on the list, but hey, you win, you survive, you advance. Congratulations, Polish power.
Good for him, babe. You know what? It wasn't that long ago that Jan Blachowicz would have been close to our cut list, and now he's the champion. So
there you go.
Let's get to the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and the Bears is a stock market reference. You're not familiar. When a stock is going up, it's a bull stock or a bull market. When it's going down, it's a bear market or bear stock. We do it 3-2-1 style, kind of like hockey's 3 stars a day. So number 1 being the best, number 3 being the worst, but still obviously good. Do you want to go first, and do you want to do the Bulls or the Bears?
Let's do the Bears first. Get the bad news out of the way.
Okay. You want to go first?
And you go first.
Okay. My 3 biggest people who lost. I'm going to start with Antonio Carlos Jr. He's my number 3. It's just going to go down to what I said before. Like, he was actually very slight underdog in this fight. It just comes down to if guys can stop his takedowns or make him work, he's going to lose. He's really one-dimensional. We talked about Michael Chiesa on the recap show about how he's, for the most part, one-dimensional, but he's made it really work at such a high level. We've had other guys in recent memory, Damon Maya, stuff like that. Unfortunately, we've seen the peak of Antonio Carlos Jr. He's never going to win the title. He's never going to be in the top 5. And this was just a rough loss to him. In a fun fight, I thought. My number 2, Amanda Ribas. This is a girl that was also a massive favorite. I think she would have got this win. She would have got a really big fight being on a Conor McGregor card. I think she would have a lot of hopes. And she has such star quality between her personality and her fighting skills. They really wanted to get her over tonight, and that did not happen. But my number 1 loser of the night is the UFC. I mean, they have a massive pay-per-view come in. They have pay-per-views freeze in. They can't get people, on, getting their money's worth. I know there was a rumor. I'm not some techie thing, but like Dana White was calling out, hackers and streamers and all this stuff. And some people like, don't call out these guys. They're going to hack you. And then this happened. And I don't know if that happened, but I did find that ironic. But also, when Conor McGregor loses, you also lose. They lost some plans. They lost some stock. If Conor loses, it's not a good night for the UFC. So my number 1 loser is the UFC. Ben, who are your 3 biggest bears of the evening?
Okay, my bottom 1, least bearish, Khalil Roundtree. We already knew that he was an inconsistent fighter, given to, lose at any given moment. But he just lost a fight that was in no way a fluke, uncontroversial, to a guy that on paper might have been the worst light heavyweight in the UFC going into the cage. A guy that could easily have been cut after his last loss. There's no way to spin that. That's a bad look. Unless it would take a huge turnaround for him to now become something other than reliable action fighter who alternates wins and losses for a few more years. Number 2, Otman Azaitar. Yeah, I know he didn't enter the cage, but he was an undefeated prospect, one of the very kind of guys, brave CF, scorching prospect that has really had a shortcut to the top and the front of the line and stardom in this new era of the UFC, and just completely pissed it away and just looked like a dumbass doing it. He didn't even get booted for doing something cool. Like, this whole thing just sounded so stupid. So even though he didn't fight, big, sell on him. Number one, kind of on the same front as you, I'm going to say ESPN Plus. Dana makes the big statement, hey, Pirates, we got a surprise for you. No, there was a surprise for their paying customers, myself included. And it was not a nice one. And I don't know if it was a, DDoS attack in retaliation, but whatever it is, took down sister companies and shared server mates, Hulu and Disney Plus for a while as well. It was a giant black hole of suck. I've been watching this sport and various combat sports for over 15 years. I'm that weird, nerdy guy that I had never illegally streamed a pay-per-view of any kind until tonight.
Well, you got him to
like the only things you could even like remotely accuse me of would be like watching Japanese events that weren't technically available in the US.
Sure.
But I've never stolen anything I could have paid for. And I did tonight, but I paid for it as well. So, fuck you.
Well, at least you didn't. At least you didn't blame it on any of our listeners in Slovenia this time.
Oh my god! But yeah, those are my Bears. Bad night for ESPN Plus.
All right, let's go over to the Bulls. These are the guys who had a great night. We'll start with you. I'll throw it right back at you. Who's your number 3 Bull for the night?
Number 3, give me Marina Rodriguez. She was a underdog, fairly healthy underdog, for good reason. You and I both said these are both really good prospects. Rodriguez has just faced a murderer's row since getting to the UFC. She's better than her record looks. And she showed out tonight. She reminded us like what's dangerous about her and kind of gave me a glimmer of hope that with the right matchmaking and continued improvement to her game, she could be like a real contender. That's fantastic. Number 2, Dustin Poirier. What more can you say? How good must that feel? How good must it feel to be that man right now?
I couldn't imagine.
Like you can't beat that.
Absolutely.
He erases what had to have been a galling loss. He minted himself the best lightweight in the UFC right now. So big ups to him. Number 1, Michael Chandler and Bellator MMA in general. Chandler, one of the more spectacular UFC debuts for like someone who was coming in at a championship level that I can remember. Anderson Silva wasn't even he was a former Shudo 167-pound champ when he came to the UFC. But I'm trying to think of someone else who came in with championship expectations and just kicked in the door like Michael Chandler did. And as we already discussed before, him doing that, especially if the success continues, just shows the shine that, hey, they might not have the full depth of roster, especially at certain weight classes, but Bellator's best stack up well with, the best fighters in the world in any weight class.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I would absolutely love to see Alex Volkanovski versus Patricio Pitbull. Like, that would be a fantastic matchup. The only fight that
no guys that short could ever beat Max Holloway.
The only fighter that I think that maybe could fit that description would be Justin Gaethje, because he had like a fight of the year candidate in his first fight, but not like a perfect performance. Like he was rocked several times and whatnot. I'm just filibustering here for a second. My Bulls are the same as yours. The only difference is I had Poirier and Chandler switched. Chandler beat Dan Hooker, Poirier beat Conor McGregor. So to me, you beat Conor McGregor, you got to be number 1. So I'm not going to get too much in mind. We have the same list, which is actually, I don't know, it might be the first time ever we got like all 3 perfect, the same exact list. So let's get to the grade. Last question. What was your grade for the card?
A-. There were no terrible fights on the card, even though I picked the top 3 fights on the card wrong. I don't mind that. The technical difficulties will piss me off forever. Yeah. I'll never let this shit go. But A-. We'll probably be looking back and talking about this as your card of the year candidate.
Yeah. So I'm going to go B. I wasn't as high. The co-main event and the main event really saved me. Like, they had like wow moments, so that's why I got a good grade for me. But you mentioned there wasn't a bad fight in the card. I agree, but there also to me wasn't a spectacular fight on the entire card. Like there wasn't a barn burning, both guys get wobbled. That's what kept it from an A. So I give it a solid B. I feel like, it ended off great, but kind of started off a little slow. So that was my grade. So there you guys have it. That is the recap of UFC 257. We went deep. We covered all the fights. We were live on YouTube. Before we get out of here, I want to thank all the people who participated on the chat on YouTube. We had a lot of comments. The guys were great. Some good questions. I apologize, guys. I was trying to obviously do a show, make sure everything's working as well, and try to get the comments on the side. But those guys are absolutely fantastic. So shout out to all you guys. We'll be back in a couple weeks. It'll be a preview show. We actually have a little time off, so you know what? That's a good thing. I'll kind of work on some of the graphics and stuff for this. If you enjoy this, please tell all your friends. Make sure you check out the preview show on Sherdog Podcast Network and Loudmouth MMA. And, of course, return for the next recap. That is Ben Duffy. I'm Keith Schillen. See you guys next time.